everyone has something they can do to contribute to this fight. Regardless of your experience, regardless of whether you're a lawyer or not, there is always something you can do. And I think right now that's what we need is for everyone to do what they can. So I hope
Yes.
you will.
Hi, Tracy. It is so nice to meet you. And because we are meeting for the first time, I would love it if you would just introduce yourself and tell me something about yourself that I don't know from reading about you online.
Okay, well, I'll do my best. My name is Tracy Fight Love. I'm the founder and executive director of Lawyers for Good Government, which was created in November 2016. We started as an outpouring of energy. About 125,000 attorneys across the country were looking for ways to pitch in and help in anticipation of what we believed would be threats to the rule of law, free speech, and so on. And so I made it my mission to help make that possible. Since that time, we've mobilized about $125 million in pro bono legal work.
Wow. And I somehow only just heard about you recently, and I was very excited because I frequently get requests from lawyers. What can I do? I also get a lot of requests from non lawyers, what they can do. And I'm always looking for productive things that lawyers can do to help. What did you do before this?
So I have kind of a long and winding career path, but I did practice for several years as a litigator with DLA Piper. After that time, for about 9 or 10 years, I spent my time in law adjacent fields where I learned so much about technology and how to do work digitally. And it turned out that that combination of legal skills and tech skills is what made Lawyers for Good Government possible.
Absolutely. And I want to, of course, talk about that and the fact that you started in 2016, November. Gee, could it have
Yeah.
been the
Quite the
election of Donald
coincidence.
Trump, number one? I think it must have been. And you
Yes.
were prescient in knowing the risk. But number two, Donald Trump term is like on speed. It's so
Yeah,
much worse than number one. There were guardrails besides you and other lawyers. Now
exactly.
there doesn't seem to be within the administration any guardrails. So you're needed even more, if I'm not mistaken.
You're not mistaken. I wish it wasn't true, but it is.
So, all right, well, let's talk. I'm just going to read a brief little bit to explain sort of the mission and purpose of Lawyers for Good Government. Um, it says you're basically pro bono lawyers who the organization identifies where lawyers can make the greatest impact and mobilize them to defend democracy and the rule of law, protect civil and human rights, and advance environmental justice for all Americans. And you provide training, paralegals, in-house lawyers that you have on your staff to help
Mhm.
volunteers, and you provide research tools. And so, and I think you also provide malpractice insurance for lawyers who take this on, which, you know, if you're listening to us and you're not a lawyer, you may not realize, but that's an important element.
Mhm.
And just the infrastructure, because in a way, you are replacing, and let me preface this with, I was a partner at Jenner and Block, one of the firms that has stood strong and firm against Trump and not, even though they had an executive order, they sued and won, as
Mhm.
any law firm that sues will do because there is no grounds for what Donald Trump is doing to big law. But many big law firms have stopped. They have the infrastructure to support pro bono efforts. Small
Yes.
law firms really don't. So, talk about some of the things that you provide in terms of infrastructure and how you're funding that.
Absolutely. So, first, let me distinguish between Lawyers for Good Government as a whole and a program that we recently launched called the Pro Bono Litigation Corps.
Oh,
For about the first 8 years of what we call L4GG as our acronym, we did an enormous amount of work. But one thing we didn't do was impact litigation. And we chose not to do that work because, frankly, there were so many organizations doing an excellent job of it, and so many law firms who were willing to contribute their resources when things needed to be referred out or when nonprofits needed co counsel from big law. We started the Pro Bono Litigation Corps, which is the first time that we are now building our own in house litigation team supported by volunteer
mm,
attorneys all over the country. because unfortunately now, as a result of the executive orders and the chilling effect that has been created, which of course was the point, it is now much more difficult to find big law firms that are able to take on
Yeah.
cases that are directly challenging governmental overreach.
I
So
would
we
quibble with your
started.
word able, if I could just interrupt for a second. They are able. They are not willing. They're stepping back. I have friends at Paul Weiss who I asked, Why would you cave to him?" "Well, we are a business." And I disagree with that interpretation of what the practice of law is. But I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I hear you. I know where you're coming from. But what we found was we needed to be able to take on these matters ourselves. But we also knew that how we have made an impact over the years is by combining the expertise of in house staff attorneys with the support that pro bonos can offer.
Hmm.
So we are really thrilled. It was a lot of factors came together that allowed us to start this new pro bono litigation program. That includes funding from a group of trial lawyers, including a trial lawyer in Atlanta, which is where I'm based, named Jay Sad. He, along with several others, as well as some additional funding that's starting to come in now, meant we had seed funding for the project of almost $2 million. And that is what made it possible for us to build the infrastructure that is required to support all of the volunteers. We now have more than 500 lawyers who have stepped forward and saying, I want to help. I want to litigate, and I have the time. I have the expertise. I know what I'm doing. Assign me to a case. So that is what the PBLC is all about. And in terms of what we offer, we have an excellent litigation director. Her name is Amy Powell. She just finished about 20 years working at DOJ in their civil division. And now she's here to lead our litigation work. We also have an incredible he was formerly a partner at Skadden in litigation. His name is Gary DiBianco. The PBLC also would not exist without his support. He and his colleague approached me when we were trying to figure out how to make all of this
Mm.
work and said, Hey, I'm a retired attorney. I'm a litigator. I want to help, but there is no infrastructure for me to do so. And that was all these different pieces that came together. He's now serving as our director of the Pro Bono Litigation Corps. So all of these things coming together is what have made it possible. And what we offer is the in-house expertise, both in terms of litigation and subject matter.
So,
Things like Westlaw. Sorry, go
okay.
ahead.
Because not everyone listening is going to know. I understand what you're saying, but I want to have you
Yeah.
go into a little more detail. First of all, you said infrastructure. So
Yes.
talk about what that means to someone who wants to volunteer. What are you providing? And you're paying for that out of either grants or contributions,
That's
right?
right.
Okay. So
Yes. So
I,
it's basically this. If I'm a single individual attorney and I want to participate in big litigation matters, there are a lot of things I'm going to have to figure out before I can do that. I have to have what we talked about, malpractice insurance, which is basically a requirement if you're a lawyer taking on a case of importance, or really any case where you're going to be providing representation. You also need access to very expensive tools. For example, legal research tools like Westlaw or LexisNexis. It is very difficult to do this type of work without access to those tools.
right.
You also need things, I don't want to bore anyone, but you need things like a docketing system, a case management tool, all of these different pieces of technology. And I keep using the word infrastructure, but that's what it is to me, that is required so that when a volunteer is ready to participate, we can just plug them in. They don't have to figure out all of those things. They don't have to start reaching out to identify potential plaintiffs. They can just come to us and say, I'm ready to go. Here's what I know. Here's what I'm good at. Put me in, coach. And
Okay.
we can get them started.
So a couple of questions. One, how are you recruiting plaintiffs? How are you recruiting lawsuits? Secondly, don't all lawyers who are practicing have malpractice insurance and some research tool, whether it's LexisNexis, whatever it is? How can you practice law without already having that? So
Yeah.
why do they need that part from you? Getting the cases, I understand, but talk about that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a couple different reasons why a lawyer would want to work through this program, depending on what their status is. If, as you say, they are already actively practicing law, they have malpractice, they have all of those things, then what they're really looking for is the cases and the context, right? If for example, if I'm a personal injury lawyer, I don't necessarily have expertise in all of this constitutional civil
Right.
rights litigation that we're trying to bring. But I do have excellent litigation skills, and I can put those to use if I'm part of a team, not just one person trying to take on
Right.
something big. But we also have a lot of volunteers who are retired or who are in between
Uh-huh.
jobs or who are working in non legal roles right now where
Yes.
they do use their
Yeah.
law background, but they're not actively practicing. They might be in house somewhere, for example. So for those lawyers, it's a combination of being part of a team, but
Right.
also having those same tools that we talked about before.
Okay, that totally makes sense to me. I'm glad I asked. Um,
Yeah,
and so let's talk about some. Well, first, let me say you also, I think, sponsored a day of protest for lawyers, which was quite successful.
it
I
was.
was unfortunately out of town, or I would have participated in the Chicago one, but National Law Day of Action. Can you talk about that
Yes.
and whether you think it really helped and whether you plan to do it again?
Yeah, that took place on May 1st. So, May 1st historically has been something called Law Day,
Yeah.
which was originally established by the American Bar Association many years
Yay.
ago. Yay. We decided to turn it into Law Day of Action. That's the new piece. And rather than just having lawyers participating in events that are exclusive to lawyers, we wanted to give attorneys an opportunity to go out into the public sphere and stand up for the rule of law. So we worked with a number of organizations, including the Bar Association of San Francisco, who was our key partner in helping to make all of this happen, but also bar associations, other rule of law organizations
Hmm.
all over the country. We had 10,000 lawyers in 50 cities across the country participate. They showed up. Many of them retook publicly their oath, which we all take when we
Yeah.
become practicing attorneys. And it was a very meaningful event.
Yeah.
I think it's quite notable that that many attorneys were willing to
Yeah.
go out and become activists. It's not the historical role that lawyers have played in moments like this, at least not in our country.
Yeah.
But we have seen examples of this in other nations, for example, in Poland, where lawyers and judges took a very active role in helping to fight back against creeping authoritarianism. So that was the importance of it for us, was to establish within the legal profession that this is work we have an obligation to do, but also to the public to say, if you see 10,000 lawyers flooding the street, something has gone horribly wrong in this country, and we need to work together to fix it.
Yeah. And I can tell you from my cousin who participated in Chicago that it was very meaningful when you say the words of your oath, which is not to a person.
That's right.
It reminds you of what your obligation as a lawyer is. So it was really a terrific thing. Um, and uh, one other question: are you a 501c or what?
Three.
It's
Yes.
501c. Okay, so contributions are deductible, right?
Yes. So we have Lawyers for Good Government. That's the organization that we have been talking about that runs PBLC as well as all of our pro bono work. And
Okay.
contributions are tax deductible.
Okay, just wanted
Just for
to let
everyone's
people know that.
understanding,
Right.
we do have an affiliated 501c4, but it's much smaller and it's not really relevant to this conversation.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we can talk about it maybe later, but let's talk about some of the lawsuits you've brought. Because the one that gets the most attention is one against the EPA, and we'll talk about that. But on your website, I can see that you have a broad array of topics that you have enough expertise in to bring suits on. So I thought it would be
Yes.
helpful to inform any of our listeners or viewers, because we can be seen as well as heard, um,
Yes.
what you sue about.
Mhm. So I should say, first of all, that this program is very, very new. In fact, I mentioned Amy Powell, our new litigation
Hmm.
director. Today, literally today, is her first day with us.
Oh,
So we have started to do the work. We've recruited the volunteers and filed our first lawsuit, which is the case against the EPA. We've also been working on some amicus briefs that we will file over the next couple of months. But in terms of cases that will be brought in the future, they're very likely to be connected to some of the key issue areas we have been working on for years. One of those is immigration. We launched our immigrants' rights
Okay.
program, which is called Project Corazon, back in 2018. And we've been working in a direct services capacity with asylum seekers and other immigrants ever since. So that is an area where, when there are opportunities to challenge policies as a whole, we would be very interested in participating. We also have programs in reproductive rights, transgender rights. We just today launched our policy resource hub for trans rights, which essentially provides up to the day information about state laws governing the rights of transgender people in 56 states and territories across the country. So that expertise is there, and we're already using that expertise in non litigation contexts. For example, to advise state governments about shield laws, which are meant to
Uh,
protect all of our bodily autonomy. So, those are areas, in addition to climate change and environmental justice, where we've already been doing the work, and it is very likely that our litigation program will continue to do work in those areas.
so do you want to talk more about the case against EPA that you filed on behalf of I stopped counting how many
Yep.
pages of plaintiffs there were, but maybe you can tell me a total number of plaintiffs. It was a lot.
Yes, I mean it's a potential class action
Yes,
on
but
behalf
there
of
are named
hundreds of federal
plaintiffs.
grantees.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. So the idea there is that the federal government decided to abruptly terminate grants that were already obligated to communities and local governments and federally recognized tribes all over the country for projects that are very important to the basic survival of people in those communities. We're talking about things like, can we please clean our water pipes so that our children have clean water to drink? Can we please put up erosion barriers so that our entire tribe doesn't have to relocate to some other piece of land further in towards the center of the country? Can we please do these basic things designed to remediate the effects that climate change are having
Yeah.
in communities across the country? And those grants were just terminated, which meant projects stopped, organizations are closing, people are losing the opportunity to move forward on projects where millions of dollars had already been spent. In other words, we've just wasted all of that time, energy, and funding on projects that were very critical to the well being of all of us. So, our lawsuit is designed to challenge those terminations, and we're acting in the hopes that those funds can be restored so that those projects can continue.
And what is the status right now? When did you file, and have you had any hearings, or what's going on?
So it was filed a couple of months ago. Most recently, there was a hearing on, I believe, the defendant's motion to dismiss. So we had that hearing a week or two ago, and we're still waiting on the decision.
And what court is that in?
I believe that was in the DC Federal District Court,
Oh,
but I
okay.
would leave that to the litigators.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. It's the important thing is, has class certification been discussed yet?
Not yet. That has
Yeah.
not been decided.
It, it's it's it is representative of so many lawsuits that have been brought for termination of funding that has been appropriated and committed, as you mentioned, in many cases, some of the work had already started, so funds were
That's right.
spent that are just totally wasted. We have the example, of course, of USAID food rotting in warehouses because they stopped delivery. So the
That's right.
food was purchased, the warehouse space was paid for, and now it's just mush.
Yeah.
It's
It's
horrible.
incredible the amount of waste that this federal administration
Yeah.
is willing to create in service of its ideas
Uh,
about what this country should be.
yeah. I could imagine the damages will be enormous in this,
Yeah,
hopefully.
these grants were worth about $3 billion.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a very significant amount of funding.
Yeah. I'm hoping, of course, that you prevail in that.
Thank you.
And are you helping with training so that, for example, many of my friends have said, I don't know anything about immigration law, but that is something that I just can't stand seeing what's happening. I want to represent people who are about to be deported or in some way get involved in advising those who might be in need of knowing what would happen if someone knocks on their door. Do you provide any training for those so that someone could contact you and say, do you have a course for me so that I can learn enough that I could volunteer?
Yeah, the vast majority of our volunteer opportunities offer training so that volunteers can learn what they need to learn in order to make a difference. There are certain areas where we have to look for people who already have some of that expertise, but there are plenty of opportunities for those
Right.
like the ones that you're talking about who say, I just want to help, but I need to learn. So I would
Right.
suggest to anyone in that situation, fill out our volunteer form, indicate in there what type of training and what type of opportunities you're looking for, and we will do our best to connect you with that so that those lawyers can get started.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if someone has been arrested, they need a lawyer who knows immigration law right now.
Right.
But
Hmm.
if you spend some time learning, then you could, a month from now, be able to
Yes,
help someone in need. And so I
that's
think
right.
it's important for people to realize that it's not too late to learn something new and
That's right.
to do it. Um, I actually had the wonderful experience when I was at Jenner of one of our big clients needing some advice that they thought because I had just come from Washington, I would know the right people in Washington. And I listened
Hmm.
to the problem and went, actually, I would have to know immigration law to help you. I don't, this is
Yeah,
not who I know. And so I actually, um, although it did turn out I did know the right person because the person who had written the treatise on immigration law was the father of a law school classmate of mine. And so I called him and said, I need help right now today. And
perfect.
he said, it's impossible. You can't do it. I said, it's my first day at Jenner and Block. I am going to do this. So give me the best advice you have. And I got it done. And then I took many courses in immigration law and developed a very rewarding immigration
Yes,
practice. And for all you lawyers who are thinking about this, let me just say there's nothing more rewarding than helping someone as a corporate litigator. You know, you're transferring money from one rich
that's right.
corporation to another, one way or the other. It just isn't as satisfying as helping one human being do
Yep.
something right. So I would urge anyone who's listening to please think about looking at the training you could get so that you could contribute here. Are there any opportunities for people who might be able to do research, who maybe aren't trained as paralegals, but who, you know, non lawyers? Is there a role for non lawyers in your organization that they could help?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've offered a lot of opportunities for non lawyers over the years. Again, I think the important thing is to fill out the volunteer form and let us know what you're looking for. But I can offer some examples. So, in the past, this was many years ago now, but it's one of my favorite examples, especially because we had a very recent win. So, in 2019, when the Remain in Mexico program was created
Yeah.
and launched, all of a sudden there were hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers who were essentially trapped in border towns in Mexico waiting for their asylum cases to move forward. But as we all could probably assume, it's not as though there are hundreds or thousands of US immigration lawyers just waiting in Mexican border towns. So, how were those individuals supposed to get legal counsel on their US immigration matters? So, we created something called the Project Corazon Travel Fund. And what that did is it made it possible for attorneys from all over the country to travel
Uh,
either to those towns or to detention centers so that we could offset some of the expense for those who were willing to donate their time and expertise.
uh,
But it was non lawyers on the back end who helped with all of the administration of that program. We had people soliciting, for example, frequent flyer miles from donors. Maybe they didn't have cash to give, but they
right.
could donate 50,000 miles. And it was volunteers working with us who were not lawyers who helped to connect the opportunity and the volunteer with all of the resources that they needed to be able to go and deliver those services. The recent win,
Mm.
by the way, is we just found out that one of the volunteers we sent 6 years ago to Matamoros to work with asylum seekers chose to continue representing that client, has been working on the case for the past 6 years, and his client just received asylum. So that was a
Oh,
big win.
wow. That is
Yeah.
so wonderful. Let's stress right now, give us the place where someone could fill out the form. Give us the
Yes.
website.
Yes. So our website is just our full name, which is lawyersforgoodgovernment.org. On the website, you go to join us or take action, and you'll see, you'll click through to the volunteer form. It should be very easy to find. But if you have any trouble finding it, please email us, which is just support@lawyersforgoodgovernment.org, and we'll help you get it figured out.
Yeah, I wish I had a graphic to put up saying Lawyers for Good Government, and I love the
Yeah.
abbreviation L4GG.
Yes.
I
Thank
like
you.
that a lot. I think it's wonderful. Um, and one maybe last question is, because a lot of your volunteers are from small firms, and I've read many of their comments. One, that this is rewarding work, very morally and mentally satisfying, but also that they can afford to do it because they don't have huge government contractor clients
That's right.
who they are at risk of losing. Jenner and Block was willing to say, that's okay. And by the way, Jenner and Block got new clients who signed on because they wanted to be represented by somebody who would stand up for
That's amazing.
themselves. And so that was good. But do do any of the big firms still at least provide assistance? Do the smaller law firm volunteers work with the big firms and get some pretty good experience from doing that as well?
So I do want to say that yes, we work with about somewhere between 125 and 150 large law firms at any given time. And every one of those firms is still doing work with us, and we are really grateful for that assistance. The difference is litigation directly challenging governmental action. That is where there has definitely been more of a dichotomy in terms of which firms are, I'm going to say, able, you were saying willing, maybe both
Yeah.
are true, to take on that work. So normally what we would see is not necessarily a solo attorney working directly with a team of large firm attorneys, but what we might see is a case team working on a pending litigation matter and potentially some of our law firm partners offering, for instance, legal research on the back
Yeah.
end. If that's what they can offer, we're grateful for that assistance.
Or
All
even
resources
conference
are needed.
rooms. I mean, it's important to have a
Exactly.
conference room. I mean, those you forget
Yeah.
how important it is if you're going to bring in 20 potential
Yep.
plaintiffs. You need a room big enough for that, and big law firms have that, so it's important. Um,
Yes.
I think that you have been just amazingly creative in thinking of this need, which I cannot say how much I agree with you that it's needed, but in sticking with it and making it a real, live, wonderful thing. Very, very happy to have had you on the show to tell people about it. I hope that you'll see an influx of applications as we post this on different social media sites. And we'll send you the link so you can post it too. And let's hope that you get a lot of volunteers. Thank you, Tracy, for the work you're doing. Is there any message you want to leave at the end of this?
Well, first, I just want to say it was an honor to be invited to this podcast. So thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to meet you. My final words would just be that everyone has something they can do to contribute to this fight. Regardless of your experience, regardless of whether you're a lawyer or not, there is always something you can do. And I think right now that's what we need is for everyone to do what they can. So I hope
Yes.
you will.
And don't be overwhelmed by the speed with which evil things are happening. The
That's right.
cruelty and the volume is part of the plan of a dictator. And
Yeah.
if we are going to maintain any kind of democracy, we have to stand up to it. And Tracy is offering you, through Lawyers for Good Government, an opportunity to be part of the solution. And I hope you will join her in this effort. Thank you for listening to us today. Come back again for the next episode.